Hello, Texas Young Republicans. Wanted to go ahead and invite and welcome everybody. And Denton County is happy to host Rachel Malone for the Precinct Convention training. And hopefully everybody got registered to vote today, updated your address. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who's here in person and everybody who's watching on the live stream. I hope that this is a helpful training for you. We will be posting links as well to my slides that are here, as well as some other helpful links, so make sure you watch for those as well. You can go through these. But what we're going to do today is talk through a precinct convention training. And if you've been through this process before, you probably have some idea of what the whole convention process is. But even if you've been through it a few times like I have, I find I still need a good refresher every single convention cycle, because the process is kind of complicated, but in my opinion, it's worth it to go through the process for the changes that I'm able to implement in public policy and the things that I care about. So just a tad bit about me before we jump into the agenda. I have worked in gun rights in the Texas legislature for the past 7 or so years, and I've been very active in the Republican Party of Texas process, and so I've picked up a lot of information about the rules and the processes, because as I've discovered, if you care about a policy item, you have to know the processes to use in order to effect change in that policy item. So as I've done that, I've picked up a lot of knowledge about the conventions, and I'm happy to share it. I will tell you right up front, one of the reasons I'm happy to share it is because I'm hoping a lot of y'all are willing to help me work in gun rights in the convention. But the beauty of this training is that if you want to go and work on education or taxes or other limited government, or you want to do gun control or something opposite of me, it's all the same process. It's all the same process that you will follow in order to make the things happen. And so whether you agree with me or disagree with me on the particular policy items, this is a process we'll be going through. So let's jump right in. So our agenda tonight, we're going to give you a convention overview so you know what to expect, and we're really going to go over the who, what, when, why, where, hows, all the W's and H's there. We're going to talk about first the overview, the big picture of what is this whole thing all about, and then we're going to go through the details and more details. And then when we finish going through some of the logistics and some of the rules, we're actually going to run through a practice precinct convention. Because I've found that sometimes when I read through the rules and I teach it, it sounds really complicated, like this super complex thing that you have to study to understand. And as soon as we do it, you realize it's kind of just like a conversation, and it's very easy, and anybody can do this. So we'll do both of those to help you guys out with understanding. So we're going to jump right in with, first of all, why be a delegate? Why would you want to be a delegate? So I've got some folks here in the room, and for those of you on the live stream, just ask yourselves these questions and think about your answers. But I'm assuming everybody's here tonight because we all care about politics and want to be involved in some way for some end that we want to achieve, right? Whether it's, for me, it's gun rights. For you, it may be other issues. There's probably something that you want to see, whether it's leave a better state for our nation, for my children and grandchildren, or I don't want to pay so many property taxes, or I think everybody should have free internet and I want the rich people to pay for it. Whatever your thing is, right? You probably care about something, and that's why you're here tonight. So why be a delegate when there are so many different ways of involvement? Because we know if you're here, you can vote, you can work on campaigns, you can volunteer, you can block walk, you can do phone calls, there's so many different ways to be involved. You can be involved in a legislative session, you can be involved, so many different options. But why would you want to be a delegate? So first of all, what does a delegate do? A delegate helps to set the Republican Party of Texas platform and rules and priorities. And we're going to talk about what a party is in a minute because that's important. But just so you have that understanding right now, the 3 things that you're going to do as a delegate are to set the party platform, the rules, and priorities. And why would you care about that? Well, you're also going to elect the party leadership. And again, why would you want to do that? We're going to talk about it. I believe it's an effective way by which you can make change happen. So we're going to go ahead and move on a couple of slides, if we could, to why be a delegate. And we're going to move on a couple more past this, and then the next one, and the next one. All right, so a political party. What do you think of when you think of a political party? Is it a group of people Well, first of all, is it somebody who calls you at night when you're trying to have dinner and asks for money? Is it those campaign flyers you get to your door every time an election is coming up? Is it all the signs? Is it going and voting? Is it candidates running and going to Congress? What is a political party? I'm going to say it can involve all of those, but it actually is none of those. A political party is a group of people, for example, like the people here in this room today and those watching this. It's a group of people who are organized, and it's like-minded voters who are organized for the purpose of implementing their shared beliefs as public policy. And sure, there are some people who might say, yeah, I believe in that, but I don't want to do anything about it. But a political party is people who believe in that same shared ideal, shared principle, do something about it, and they believe that being involved in politics is a means to that end, is a means to getting done what they want to be done. So that is a political party. It's a group of voters. So a lot of times I'll hear people say, oh, the party needs to do this, or the party needs to do that. And yes, it's true that there's leadership of a party, and there are people who are more closely involved. But at its root, the party is the people. And so if you feel like you're a part of the party and you want the party to do something, you are one of those people you're talking about. You say the party needs to do it, well, you're one of those people that is the party. If you're a Republican Party voter, you're of the Republican Party. And in Texas, we have the advantage of the grassroots having so much more ability to control. It's so much more bottom-up than anywhere else. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Let's go on to the next one. And convention. Okay, so we have a party and we have a convention. It's kind of like the chicken and the egg. We're not sure which came first way back when, but now we have both, so we're just going to keep rolling with it. So a convention is a place for those party members who have the shared beliefs to come together every couple of years and redefine those shared beliefs and to decide how to implement them into public policy. And that goes back to what I was describing as the platform, the rules, the priorities, and the leadership. And so it's those documents and those people who will take our ideas that we share, that we said, we believe in gun rights, we believe in limited government, we believe in whatever the other shared policies are. We believe in these things. Now we want them implemented into public policy. And here are the people who want to help do that by perhaps getting others elected to do it, as well as working within legislative bodies to do it. And here are the processes, and here are the things. So that's the generalities. And our next slide, if we could please. Why is it important, or why could it be important to be a delegate when you have so many other options? Let's take a look at some numbers. So in 2016, that was our last presidential election year, we had 9 million voters in the general elections. That's a whole lot of people. Now, I'm not telling you your vote didn't count. Your vote absolutely counted if you voted. And in some of the smaller elections, races can be won by one vote, one or two, or just a small handful of votes. So absolutely, your one vote can be very influential. But if you're going to go and try to influence 9 million voters all across a very broad region to vote with you on something, that's rough. You have to get half plus one, right? That's a lot of voters, 4.5 million plus one, just to get your thing implemented into public policy, or your person sent there so your person can implement the thing into public policy, we hope. So let's narrow it down. What about the primary election? The primary election happens in the spring, and that's where the party decides who were going to be its candidates in the general election. So the primary elections are coming up March 3rd of this year in 2020, and we'll be voting. If you go and you choose to vote Republican, you have only Republicans on your ballot. It's not a choice of Republican, Democrat, and you're deciding which is the one you want to be the Republican candidate to go up against the other party candidates in November and hopefully win there, if that's what you're going after. So there were 2.8 million voters in the Republican primary last presidential cycle, which is a heck of a lot of people, but still, not quite as many as a general election. So you could say, well, we have a little more influence, especially in a smaller race, but still that's a lot of people to influence. Well, let's bump it down. The 2020 state convention, this would be the 2018, but I think we're looking at the same numbers for 2020. We've got 9,000 voters, 9,000 voting slots for people to come in and vote, representing Republicans all across the state. That's still a lot of people, but it's a lot easier to influence 4,500 plus one to vote with you than it is to influence 4.5 million plus one. And so that's an example of how it's a little easier in a sense to get something done. It only takes a few people to actually implement this, to actually implement your ideas, whereas it takes so much more money and so many more people in other elections. All right. So it can help you to leverage your voice and your vote. Okay, so that's some big picture overview of why we do this, and it's a little kind of high up there. Let's come down a little bit and let's talk about how this thing actually works. And this is actually a pretty tiny analogy. So we just had the Super Bowl yesterday at the time of this recording. So we're going to talk about football playoffs. So when it comes time for the Super Bowl, that's not the first game, right? They don't bring everybody there on the field all at the same time and say, everybody duke it out and we're going to find the number one person, but we've got all the teams and we just keep on going until somebody beats all the others. We don't do that, right? It starts quite a time before that with various teams grouping up and playing against each other, and you move up to the next level, until you finally get to the end, you have your final champion. Well, you can think of the conventions kind of like football playoffs because you have the various levels. So it's a tiered set of meetings. Each primarily have the responsibility of electing delegates to the next level. So you come together with a small group right in your area, and then you decide, hey, who's going to represent us at the next level, because you have all these groups happening in neighborhoods all across Texas. And each of them sends their best folks up to the next regional level, and each of the regions sends their best folks up to the state level. And then there is actually a national convention this year where each state sends their folks up to the national level. But each time you're narrowing it down, you have fewer people. So you're still getting every area represented, but you're narrowing it down to a manageable group of people who can get work done, and that's the goal. Delegations from the entire state or nation come together in a group small enough to get work done. So a precinct. Let's talk about what is a precinct. Everybody probably votes. You may vote in your precinct. Nowadays, we have technology that allows people to vote usually anywhere in your county for some counties. But I remember back in the olden days when I was young and in my early 20s, when we didn't have that technology and everybody went to their own precinct in their own neighborhood to vote. You had to go there. So those people in your neighborhood at that particular, your exact polling location, that's your precinct. And the primary voters, the people who vote in the Republican Party in that area, in that precinct, are eligible to be a part of your precinct convention. Did you know you don't have to have any other qualification? If you're part of the Republican Party, which if you vote in the Republican primary that year, you are. That's the only credential. So you're a registered voter, you vote in that primary, you are eligible to be a delegate to that precinct convention. And then if you do the work, everybody at the precinct convention who wants to generally gets the chance to move up to county and SD. And if you do the work again, everybody who really wants to is going to get that chance to move to state. Now, I say everybody who really wants to if you do the work, because there are some larger districts where you have to narrow it down. There are some people who don't get to go who might have wanted to and tried. But pretty much if you do the prep work, you're involved and you follow the process, you know the process, and you really want to do it, you're going to be able to go either as a delegate or alternate, and we'll get into that in a minute. But that's the tiered set of meetings: precinct, county, SD, and state. So precinct is your neighborhood. County and SD, let's talk about that. So Texas is divided into 254 counties. And it's kind of like a grid, because when they set up the counties, they wanted everybody in the county to be able to get to their county courthouse without driving too far. So even if it's in a rural, very sparsely populated area, the county still isn't that big. So it's kind of like this grid, and they're not quite evenly shaped all across Texas, of 254 somewhat evenly sized counties. The Senate districts are very different. There are 31 Senate districts, and they're based more on population. Not exactly, but somewhat on population. So in areas like Harris County, you're going to have a ton of Senate districts all in Harris County because there's so much of the population there. And when you get to West Texas, you're going to have one whole Senate district covering many dozens of counties, 30, 40 counties, I think, for one of our largest districts up there, because there just aren't that many people. So here's the deal. On the county SD convention, you meet with everybody in your county who is also in your same Senate district. Now, if you're in one of those counties where everybody's in the same Senate district, then you're with all of the Republicans in your county who got sent up from precinct conventions. But if you are in one of those counties that's split up, and some of you are in different Senate districts, like I know, I'm not sure about Denton, but I know Tarrant split up into 4, I know Travis is split up into 4. So if that's the case, you'll meet with just those people in your county who are also in your same Senate district. So we call that the county SD convention. SD is for Senate district. And then those people, that region, will then send their best folks up to be delegates to the state convention. So each step along the way, what you're doing is you're saying, okay, we're going to get together, we're going to talk about the ideas that we share, and those are resolutions, and we can actually move forward too. Those are resolutions, and then you're going to move those forward, but you need people to take them forward, so you elect those delegates to move them forward. And that's the point of the convention process, until you get to the end and you implement them. So delegates absolutely are grassroots Republicans. In some states, it's more of a bought and paid for position. Texas is actually very rare that we are so grassroots led and so bottom up, but we are. Any regular person, even if you've never participated in the process, you can do it. I had one year I was training a lot of new people who were interested in helping bring forward a brand new idea. We were working on constitutional carry, and we were working on legislative priorities. Nobody had ever heard of it. Nobody had done it before. And so I traveled across the state, and I trained a lot of people, some of them whom had never voted in a primary, but they were very interested in being involved. And they followed the process, and dozens of them were able to make it all the way to the state convention process and as delegates and get themselves elected because they cared about it and they worked hard and they knew the process. So it's absolutely grassroots, everyday people. You don't have to be somebody famous or well-known to do it. And people who participate in the shaping of the party, you do serve as volunteers. There's not much of an effort involved in going to your precinct convention. It's usually a very short meeting in your neighborhood. Your county SD convention may be an hour, it may be all day. It kind of depends on your district and how much people like to talk. But it's still not that bad of a lift. You just have to give up your day, maybe. And it's going to be in your same county, in your same area. So not too far to drive. You don't have to get a hotel. If you do go to the state convention, and especially if you go to the national convention, that's where it gets expensive. So think about that if you want to go start budgeting and saving up. There are ways to do it cheaper if you Airbnb with folks and everything, but just keep that in mind. If you want to go to the next, all the way up to the state level or farther, there's going to be some costs involved. But it is a volunteer position, and you are elected to represent your districts. So that's our delegates. Let's move on to a little more of specifics. We're going to go to who and what and how. So what is a precinct convention? I already kind of mentioned this. It's the folks in your neighborhood who voted in the Republican primary, generally, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but people who go vote in the Republican primary, live in your same neighborhood, you're going to get together and you say, hey, what are the things we agree on? You know, do you all agree that, our state sport should be shooting? Okay, cool, we're going to put that down. Do we all agree that, Texas flag is the best? Of course, that's already set. Do we all agree in this thing for... No, that was I'm being a little sarcastic there. We talk about actual policy. But you get my point there, right? So we're talking about what are the things we care about, which usually we're going to have stuff about gun rights, stuff about property rights. In the Republican Party, typically people are concerned with limited government, but the question is how much limited and what do we need to focus on and what do we need to prioritize in our priorities, what else do we need to put in the platform, just as our statements of beliefs and the things that we want to happen, and then what rules do we want. So we talk about those, and we talk about who's going to represent us at the next level and take those up to the next level. And then the same thing pretty much at the county Senate district convention, only it's more people there. You talk about your shared beliefs. And then you say, okay, here's what we agree on. Here are resolutions. We believe these things. Who's going to carry these for us to the next level and be our champions at the next level? All right? And then moving on, we've got what is the RPT state convention. Again, that is all the districts across Texas. And this is where it gets different, because the goal here is not just to send people onto the national convention, which we will do, but the goal here is to say, okay, we are going to set the Republican Party of Texas. We are going to decide what is the Republican Party of Texas. Who's going to lead it? What are they supposed to do? What are our rules that they're going to have to abide by? So if you find yourself saying, oh, the party needs to do this, or the party should do this and should quit doing this and should do more of this, this is your chance to go and be the ones who establish that this is what they're supposed to do. You can be the party and you can be the change. if you're willing to take that time. And remember, you don't have to be the one that goes all the way to the expensive and time-consuming parts. Do it if you can. Otherwise, find people in your area to send to take your ideas forward, because that's another way of accomplishing that. So you'll elect the party leaders, which is the state chair, the vice chair, and the SREC members. I'm not going to go into great detail there, but the SREC stands for State Republican Executive Committee, and they are the ones who are elected, 2 from each Senate district. So a total of 62 of them, so 31 districts, 2 from each, male and a female from each, and they are the board of directors for the Republican Party of Texas. So they're the ones who make budget decisions. They make policy decisions of, hey, what resolutions are we going to put forward? They make decisions, some of y'all may have heard this past weekend, they were making decisions about who was going to be allowed to have a booth at the Republican Party of Texas. So sometimes public controversial things that actually hit the news. So if those are things that you care about, you need to be thinking about who do you want to represent you on the SREC. And if your SREC are already doing a good job, re-elect them if they're running. Or if they're not running or you don't feel like they're representing you, talk to them about it and maybe run yourself or find somebody else. But that's when you elect the people who run the party from day to day. They decide who gets paid how much. They make those decisions. So those are the people, it's you, the Republican voters, who decide who will run the party on a day-to-day basis and on a general board of directors basis. All right, moving on. We have the rule book. So the first rule book that we have to start with is the Constitution. Everybody's generally familiar with some Bill of Rights. So the First Amendment gives several rights. It gives 5 different rights, including the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So that means a lot of different things. It can be anything from Rosa Parks on a bus to us going to the Capitol to testify or calling your legislators. And it can be, actually the Supreme Court has held it to include political parties gathering, making their statements, making the platform. That is your petitioning the government for redress of grievances. That's a part of it. In fact, there was one time when California tried to say, hey, let's quit having primaries. We're just going to make all the Republicans and Democrats run all their candidates together and see the 2 front runners. Even if they're both Democrat, they'll both run against each other. And the court said, no, you can't do that. They have the right to have their own primaries and assemble together to petition the government. So we start out with the Constitution, but then we move to the RPT rules for some more of the basics. And I'm not going to belabor the RPT rules right now because that would be a little bit too dense for this training. But I strongly encourage you, especially if you're thinking about going through the convention process, take a look through the rules. Some of them are a little long or a little clunky or a little wordy, but they're very readable. Any person who has basic literacy and reading knowledge, you can read through them and you can understand the basics. You can start with the first few. You can also go straight to Rule 19. That's where the rules start talking about precinct conventions and how they're held. And you can also think of them, hear me out here. Think of them like the Bible in the sense that you have your 10 Commandments, right? You have like your basic rules, and then you have numbers, you have all the delegate allocations. So the rules go through how many delegates can go. And just as one example, they say at the precinct convention, how many people can your precinct convention send to that county SD? Well, they can send 1 delegate for every 37, I believe, people who voted for the Republican governor in the last election. So 1 per 37. And then once you get to your county SD, it's, I think, 1 voter per 750 gets to go to the state convention. So it gives those numbers. And if you think that 9,000 is way too many, then you can go and change the rules and try to change them. And if you think that the platform should only have 5 planks, you can go and try to do that. I'll fight against you and I'll probably win because I have more people. But you can try to change it however you want to. So then besides the RPT rules, we have Robert's Rules of Order, which is just our basis for governing and for organizing and running the meeting. And if you've ever been to a CEC meeting or anything where people raise their hand, say, I make a motion to do this, anybody move to adjourn, we're going to take a vote on this, do I have a second, is there any discussion on this? That's Robert's Rules of Order. And it's designed to not get in the way. It's designed to help you organize conversation. So at a precinct convention, when it might be 2 people or 5 people, or if you have a really huge convention, you might have 10 people, well, you don't really need as much of a help in organizing, right? You can mostly have a conversation. But if you have 9,000 people, you can't all just get around the table and have a conversation. So you need a little more structure. So that's what Robert's Rules is designed to do. It's designed to give you that structure. And then also we follow the Texas Election Code. There are some things in the Texas Election Code that require certain aspects of our party to be run a certain way. And so we follow that as well in the running of our party, and that's usually reflected in the rules. But it has been established that parties do have that right to run themselves and to assemble as they see fit. All right, so let's move on. That is our rule book. Now, at a convention, you have to have a referee. Let's go back to our football reference, right? Think of the Super Bowl. Does everybody just always get along and just decide, you know what, you won that one? No, I won that one. No, I definitely lost that one. No, you need a referee, right? Everybody's going to want to have won. Everybody's going to be a little bit biased. You need an unbiased referee, and that is the chairman of your convention. So every convention has a chairman. Now, don't confuse that with your precinct chair or county chair or state chair. It might be the same person, but it's not the same office. Just like your pastor might also be your banker, but that's two very different things, okay? It just might happen to be the same. So your convention chair is a separate office, and we'll talk about how it happens. But the job of the chairman in a convention is to just ensure that fair process, make sure everybody gets heard. And you're going to start out with a temporary convention chairman, which we'll get into that in a second, what it is. But that's the person who has the right to just get the thing started, get it rolling. And if everybody likes them, they can say, oh, okay, we're going to elect you for our permanent. And if they say, no, you're just not being fair, we want somebody else, they can elect somebody else for the permanent chairman. But the chairman is that referee who organizes and hopefully has a fair process. And think about it for a second. A chairman's job really is to make sure that and really the role of using Robert's Rules. The chairman uses Robert's Rules and that whole system in order to help ensure that the minority always gets heard. But in the end, after the minority has had their say and had their chance to convince everybody, the majority, whatever it happens to be at that time, always wins. So it's just a fair and open process. Everybody can debate until, and hopefully be heard, ideally in a convention, and then you have a vote and the majority wins. All right, moving on. So let's go back to even more specifics. Who can be a delegate? And I hope I've convinced everybody here you can be a delegate. You can absolutely be a delegate, but here's how. You have to be affiliated with the Republican Party. Well, first, you've got to be registered in your precinct. So you live in Texas. I'm talking to Texans here, assuming you're Texas, because what else is there, right? So you're Texan because you're awesome, and you are Republican, so you are registered to vote in your precinct, registered correctly, and then you are affiliated with the Republican Party. Now, the easiest way is you just go vote in the primary this year on March 3rd, and I don't care who you voted for in any other general election or primary or any other time in your life, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you voted in the Republican primary this time, therefore, that makes you currently affiliated with the Republican Party and eligible to be a delegate. Now, what if you have this international business trip and you fly back, you're leaving tomorrow morning, before early voting starts, and then you fly back at 7:01 p.m. after polls close. Oh my gosh, now can you not vote? Or can you not be a delegate? False. You can still be a delegate. You can actually sign an oath of affiliation, and it's nothing crazy. It doesn't mean that you're always going to vote Republican and you're always going to, name your kids Abraham Lincoln or anything like that. All it means is that you don't have to dedicate your firstborn anywhere. All it means is that you're agreeing not to participate in any other party's process for this convention cycle. So literally right now and through the next couple of years, you're not going to go to the Libertarian Party and say, well, I'm going to be a part of your process and be a delegate to your convention also. And you didn't go vote in the Democratic primary, then try to affiliate with the Republican Party. You can't do that this time. It doesn't matter what you did 2 years ago. It doesn't matter what you're planning to do in 2 years. It only matters this time right now for this cycle. So if you haven't voted in any primary, then you can just sign that oath of affiliation and participate in the Republican Party process. All right, so any Texas Republican, and that's what that means, registered in your precinct and affiliated with the Republican Party. Okay, let's talk about your precinct convention. And I mentioned the RPT rules. This is all in the RPT rules. So RPT Rule 21 gives the order and the agenda for the precinct convention. And again, it might sound a little complicated. We're going to run through it all in a minute. It's going to be super easy and pretty chill. It's really like this conversation around your table. If you're lucky, you might have 5 people there. That's a lot. Some huge precincts might have 8. It might be just you. It might be you and one other person. So not a huge deal. However, don't be that county that says, you know what, it's only 2 of us who ever show up. We're just going to agree to skip it and go directly to the county conventions, because if you try to do that, it doesn't work. You do not get to go to the state convention. That's not a valid convention. You must have that precinct convention in order to send valid delegates up to the county SD convention. Because if your precinct didn't have that actual precinct convention, even if it's only 5 minutes long, it was only one person. If you didn't have that, you can't send anybody like you to the next convention. You can't send anybody to the next convention. You got it? So you got to hold that precinct convention, even if it's super quick. So number 1, you're going to have your call to order, and you list your participants, and you make your announcements. And then as soon as you do that, you elect your permanent officers. So it can be the same people as are leading it, or it could be somebody else. You announce the next level convention. So you say, hey, the county SD convention is going to be held this particular time. You elect delegates to the next level. So again, you pick the people to represent you at the next level. And let me take a note about this one. You don't have to elect only the people who are there. So if you're there and you say, you know, I want to go to the next level, my husband does too, you can nominate your husband or your whoever else is a registered voter in that district who's affiliated with the Republican Party, either by voting in the primary or by signing the oath of affiliation. And everybody who's present can vote, and if they vote yes, that person gets to be a delegate. Also, if for some reason you're busy and you absolutely cannot attend that convention, that precinct convention, but you want to be a delegate to the next one, just ask your neighbor or precinct chairman or somebody in your precinct who's a Republican to go and be a part of that and nominate you. And yeah, the precinct still has to vote on it, but typically there are a lot more places than there are people who want to go. And so it's usually pretty easy to go to precinct convention as a delegate if you want to go. That having been said, you know, if your precinct has 10 people, or sorry, if your precinct has 10 slots, so you get to elect 10 delegates to the next one, and there are only 5 of you there, you could start with, hey, you know, does everybody here want to go? Okay, we're going to elect all of us and we're done. Or, seriously, I'm not saying to do this, but just so you know the rules, if everybody there wants to go, but the majority of you decide you're not going to elect one person because you don't like them because they just ran over your cat or whatever it is, you don't have to elect them. It's a majority vote. So it's whoever you as a majority decide are going to go. People who are there, people who are not there, whatever your majority vote is, as long as they're a registered voter, you get to send them. So you have your election of delegates, and then you have your resolutions. And resolutions, we're going to go over this in a second, but resolution is a statement of belief, and it can be either for a platform item. So I want to, I don't know, what's a platform item? I'm trying to think of it's not like a main priority item. So like we want to be able to buy and sell raw milk easily. We want something to be not permitted anymore. We want to change car registrations. We want to get rid of this process or anything in public policy. And you just write that out and you say, here's what I want. Everybody discusses it if they want and they vote on it. And if they like it, then that's your resolution. You can also say, I want, RPT Rule 21 to say something different about the order. I think we should do our resolutions first before we elect delegates. You could have that resolution. Or you could say, I think that it should be a priority to get rid of property taxes, have constitutional carry, and gun-free zones, whatever the thing is you want. And you can vote for that as a priority, as a resolution that it should be a priority. And then if anybody has other business, that happens, and then you adjourn. So it all can be pretty quick unless your precinct wants to talk about things longer as you go. It just depends. The longest one I've been in lasted a few hours because we had a lot of very opinionated people there who had a lot of resolutions. It's more common for them to be anywhere from 5 or 10 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. So that's what we're looking at. All right, next. All right, electing delegate to the next level. And I already kind of talked through this because I just got so excited I was getting ahead of myself. But again, just remember, you'll have a certain number of delegate slots. Those slots are set by the RPT rules, and it's tied to the number of people who voted for the for your party's governor in the last election. So the number of people who would have voted for Governor Abbott in 2018. I'm getting mixed in my years here. Last year I did it was a little bit different. So that's what we're looking at there, and that's what determines. It's based off of that. It's a formula based off of that. And then who's eligible? Again, they don't have to be there. They can be there, but it has to be that Texas Republican affiliated with the party and must be elected by your precinct convention. Well, let me make a note on this one. So there was a certain precinct convention that I'm aware of that one time, and I think this happens way too frequently, so let's try to put a stop to it. So precinct chair had always just led his precinct conventions. He'd done it his way, and he was just used to the people in his precinct who always knew they wanted to go to the convention, but he would just tell them, you know what, don't worry about showing up to the precinct convention. It's a waste of your time. I'll just put your name down on a piece of paper. You will be a delegate to the county SD convention. Well, until somebody showed up who knew the rules and said, well, we have to elect them. You can't just put their names down. You can't take the paperwork home and just fill in all these names later. We have to elect them. So if you don't have their names now to nominate, we can't elect them. And once we adjourn, you cannot add names to that. And so everybody there voted against adding that list of 20 people who didn't show up to the delegate list. They said, no, the 10 of us showed up. We get to go. We don't care about those 20 people who didn't bother to show up. And so the majority of the convention voted against his list of people that he'd promised he was going to put on there. Tried to complain about it. He tried to bring complaints against the other people. He ended up getting shut down because he was trying to not follow the rules. You absolutely cannot do that. You can't take your forms home and fill in those names later. Your convention right there at the time has to vote. A majority vote wins, and after you adjourn, that paper doesn't change. You can't add more names. You can't delete names. It doesn't matter if you really love your friend Joey and you forgot their name. You cannot get added as a delegate or alternate to the county SD convention. Now, the great thing is if, for some reason your precinct convention didn't give your name to the county SD convention, you can still go to your county SD convention people and say, but please make me a delegate to state, and you could still be a delegate to state. Right, you don't have to go all the way up. That's fine. But we'll talk about that a little bit later when we get into that. In fact, I'm going to have a whole other training just to talk about the next 2 levels of convention. So we're not going to really get into the weeds on that. But just know that if you want to be a state convention delegate, you have to be elected by the county SD. That's the second level. You don't necessarily have to be elected from the first level to the second. You just have to be, whatever convention you go to, you have to be elected by the previous ones. And the last note I'm going to say on this slide is make sure you get copies of your documents. Your convention chair is required to keep good records and submit good records, but inevitably it happens in so many conventions. Either somebody tried to make a mistake or they didn't try to make a mistake and it's human error, or something got messed up or wet or torn or didn't get turned in, sometimes gets lost in the mail. Sometimes, yes, it is actually malicious conduct because people didn't want that list to go out, so they lost it. Things happen. So before you leave that convention, take a picture of your paperwork. Always do it. We used to have to run copies. Now everybody's got a smartphone. Just go snap that picture. That's your backup. And yeah, just as a note, we do have forms that the party gives to write all the information down as you go through the convention. They have the special forms for filling in your delegates or writing in your resolutions. Those are just a suggestion. Those are just a friendly, helpful thing. You absolutely do not have to use those forms. So if something happens and you get to the convention place and everything's shut down and you have to just sit in the back of your car and use napkins and write everything down with napkins and pencils, that's still valid. You just write the information down as you go through. So it can be very informal. It just has to have certain information. Make sure you get copies of that information. All right, resolutions, and I already kind of talked through this, but let's give some specifics. A resolution sounds like something really legal, right? Some legal document that's really complicated. It can be as simple as to have a license to carry a gun. I don't care. That can be your resolution. Or if you want to fancy it up a little bit and give people some context, you can say something like, whereas the majority of states don't require a permit to carry a handgun, Whereas Texas is known as the pro-gun state, but we're not really, but we need to catch up. Whereas people are safer when they can have access to a gun without having to have a license. Therefore, we shouldn't have to have a license to carry a gun. You can do that. So you can add words if you want. The longer you make it, the more trouble I feel like people tend to have with the resolutions. You can put the whereas clauses at the beginning when you write it just to explain a little bit of why, but I don't recommend having a lot of them just from personal experience, nothing about rules. I found that the more whereases you have, the more people get concerned and a little wary of it, and the whereases don't really go into the platform anyway. So what I recommend, just as something I've found personally that works, again, nothing having to do with rules, just a recommendation, get your policy idea written, as clearly as you can, or if it's just right there on the spot, scribble it out, this is what I want to happen. Get rid of property taxes. And if you want, put a couple of whereases just for your basic reasons. And then if you want to explain it more, just write a little list of bullet points at the bottom. Hey, this is a good idea because blah, blah, blah. Here's the background on this. Here's how many states do it. Whatever your arguments are, you can put them at the bottom just as a discussion. Hey, by the way, here's some information. Here's some background. But you don't have to make that a part of your resolution if it's not just the policy statement. So again, friendly tip. That's something in my experience I've found that works well. You might try it. But there is not a required format. Like I said, you can write down few words on the back of a napkin and it works. That can be your resolution. You just have to give it to them in writing. And there have been a lot of times I've been at a convention where somebody came and said, well, I think we should do this. They didn't have it written. And we said, well, you have to have 3 copies. So what do? Say, oh, you have to go home. You can't be a part of this. You didn't bring. No. We say, okay, here are 3 pieces of paper from my purse I found. I found 1 piece of paper. I'm going to tear it into 3 and we're going to write the same words on each one of them and here are your 3 copies. So you just make it happen right there. It's actually kind of informal. You just have to, at the end of the day, when you finish the convention, have 3 copies of the same words on different pieces of paper. And then once you bring it up, everybody can discuss it. And there have been some times that I'll bring a resolution. Everybody's like, oh, that's great. Let's pass it. And there's sometimes I bring it up and they say, no, we're just not going to go for that, and they're done. But a lot of times they want to talk about it. They want to say, well, why would you want to do that? And sometimes they say, well, I'd vote for it, but I really don't like this part. Could we change it to this? And then I have to consider it. And I really encourage you to do that. If somebody says, well, I'm just having trouble with this part of it, think about, is that an essential part of your resolution? Is that really the gist of it? Like if somebody said, well, I really like the resolution about we shouldn't have to have a license to carry guns, except for I think most people should have a license, well, that just negates the whole thing. But if they say, well, I really like that. I just think people should have the license as an option. And I say, well, that's exactly what it says. That's what I meant. Well, what I can do to help them is add those words in, because I'm fine with those words. That doesn't change the meaning for me, but it helps them to get there. So if you find that somebody has a hang-up over certain words, and you can rewrite the resolution a little bit to help them get past that hang-up or add something else that means something to them, even if you don't care about it, as long as it doesn't harm your resolution, really consider adding that. And something you can do just to be the helpful person, even if it's something you don't really care about but you're fine with, if somebody else has a resolution and they're having trouble with it, if you think it's an okay resolution, help them out. Say, hey, well, you could try rewording it a little bit. This might help you. Be that helpful person. It might come back nicely. There's karma, right? Or it's just, it feels good to be a nice person sometimes. You don't need to make enemies if you don't have to. So that's a good way to make friends and help people out. But anyway, what you're going to do is discuss and consider those amendments. And in a precinct convention, the amendment is very informal. You don't have to say, I move that we amend such and such and such. Raise your hand. It's not that formal. But you do have to, at the end of the day, have your correct wording reflected on the piece of paper. So you discuss your amendments and you vote, and the majority wins. And then you elect people to carry it on. Again, that's your delegates, right? The people who are going to say, okay, I'm going to go advocate for these things at the next level. So here's a pro tip. If you've got that one issue you really care about, make sure, especially if you're not going to go to the next level, try to help people and help bring people in and elect people who do like your ideas and who will help carry them and who are on board with you for those ideas. All right, moving forward. And again, this is just a peek forward. We're going to go over the next level convention in more detail at a different training, because I know it's a lot of information to just dump on you at once, especially if you haven't done the process. But the way you move your ideas forward at county and SD convention, it's a little more formal, and it's a longer process. So you're going to have committee meetings. So instead of just everybody showing up to convention, because you might have 20 or 30 or 50 people, or maybe even 100 or 300, like in some that I've been at, if you're in a larger district, you have to have prep work ahead of time in order for it to run smoothly. So you have certain committees and committee meetings, and those are groups of people who will cull through all the precinct ideas and say, okay, we had a lot of precincts bring forward this idea for a platform or for a priority or for a rule, so let's really pull these and consider. And they might say, well, we had one precinct talk about this, but we don't really like that idea at all. That was the only precinct, so let's just shut that down. We're not going to let that through. And so they'll make that decision on the various ideas brought forward, and then they'll give their proposal to the whole entire convention. Now, I want you to note something. A couple of things here. If you were the only one in your whole county or an SD region to bring forward that idea in your precinct convention, it's kind of a gamble. So if that committee of maybe 8 people, maybe 10, I can't remember how many it usually is, no more than a dozen people, if they don't like your little resolution, they say, oh, we don't like that, they can just dismiss it and shut it down. You can try to bring it up on the floor, but it's really hard. So there are a couple of ways to help make sure your ideas get moved forward. Number one, try to talk to others in your area, other precincts, and have them pass the same resolution at their precinct convention. There was one year when I traveled around the state just to give people ideas, and I wasn't really tracking, I didn't know, but there ended up over half of the conventions apparently brought it forward because they cared so much. And that was about making constitutional carry a legislative priority. And that's when it started gaining momentum, because people realized, oh, there are a lot of others who care about this, let's do it. So having other people bring it forward is important. Something else is you can try to get yourself on that committee. Be one of those people to say, if everybody else says, oh, I don't really like that, we'll say, you know what, here are some reasons in favor. So you do that by talking to the person who's going to be your temporary county SD chair. And I'm getting a little ahead of myself because this is a little deeper than I was going to go on this. But I'm just going to say contact your county chair or somebody related or somebody in leadership in your party, and they can probably help you out. Or check out your county party website. Sometimes they'll post, but sometimes you really have to get in there and ask for it, because there's certain people who are always the ones they appoint, and you've got to get in there early and make your request, and they may or may not accept it, but you try to get yourself on that committee. And another way is you just go and testify before the committee, because you can do that if you're a delegate or an alternate. You can say, hey, that was my resolution. I wish you'd include that, please, and you get it included. So again, at the committee meetings, that's when you really want to do that work as much as you can, move your ideas forward. Again, the committees for the second tier, we're talking about tier 2 now, county SD convention. This is how they move forward. And then hopefully the floor, which is all the delegates, they vote for them as well. You can speak in favor of them on the floor of the convention, particularly if the committee shut them down. But hopefully they get moved forward, and your county SD convention again elects delegates to take them to the state convention. And then moving on to the state convention, the final step for those resolutions is going to be establishing your ideas there. That's your committee meetings. So let's look at time frame here. Precinct conventions, and I think I have this a little bit later, but they're going to happen anywhere from March 3rd to March 21st of this year. And it's up to your county executive committee to decide. I'm throwing a lot of names and acronyms and things at you, but it's your county party leadership. They decide. It could be election night, 30 minutes after polls close, or it could be a few days later or a week later, or anywhere up to March 21st, because on March 21st is your county SD convention. That's the second level. And then your state convention actually lasts the whole entire week. It is in Houston this time. It's going to be May 11th through 16th. So the 11th through 13th is when we have the temporary committee meetings. So if you care about policy items, that is the most important time I would encourage you to show up. If you're saying, hey, Rachel, there's no way I can take off work and stay in Houston for a whole entire week. I can't stand that much politics. I can't either. It's okay. Stay there for a few hours or a day, but show up sometime May 11th, 12th, and 13th. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and they usually go pretty late at night. And just speak to the committee and say, here's what I think. Please do this. And bring 5 of your other friends who are delegates to do that also. If you do, there's a very good chance that will end up being a part of that committee's recommendation. And then you have your permanent committee members. Again, we'll get into the details of how that happens later on. But they meet on May 14th. That will be, it should be Thursday, I believe, is when they're going to be meeting this year. I believe it'll be Thursday this year. And you can speak to them as well. And then May 14th, 15th, 16th, which is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's when the convention meets as a whole. So there are 9,000 people, but if your idea didn't get included in that big booklet of things recommended to get voted on, or if it got included and somebody's trying to make it go away, you can get up there on the floor, go to a mic, and get recognized, and you can speak on your resolution. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be special words. In fact, if you can't quite come up with the right words to say the thing that you want to say, the convention chair's job is to help you say that thing if you can figure out what you're trying to get at, okay? So their job is not to shut you down. Their job is to help you speak. So that's what you can do, again, to move your resolutions along. And if your state convention votes as a majority yes on that, then that idea is now in either the rules, the platform, or the legislative priorities, whatever the idea, wherever category it fit into, and you have now made that wonderful step towards having it officially a part of the party, what the party is supposed to do, as a step towards moving it into public policy. So that's kind of the process for resolutions. Okay, moving along. So where resolutions go, this is, again, looking back through what I just talked through, but where specifically do they go at each convention? So the precinct and county SD conventions, well, the precinct convention, you don't have committees. It's just everybody talks about it. The county SD convention, all the resolutions go to the resolutions committee. Doesn't matter what kind of resolution they are. When you get to the state convention, that's when they're broken apart. So your policy statements go to resolutions committee, your rule ideas go to the rules committee, and your legislative priority ideas go to the legislative priorities committee. So that's pretty intuitive. All right, moving along. When and where? Okay, we'll just run through this, and then we've got a practice precinct convention. So yeah, I totally jump ahead of myself here because I get so excited about these processes because aren't rules just thrilling? I think they're thrilling. So set by your county party. There's your link. If you see it up on the screen, texasgop.org/county_chairs. That's where you can contact your own county chair and say, hey, when is this thing going to be? Where do I find mine? What's the deal here? And those are the dates it's going to be. And then moving on, we got our county SD, again, the 21st, but the temporary committees do meet before then. And your county party will set the time and location. So again, check with your county chair. And then moving on to state convention, I already mentioned that. It's in Houston, May 11th through 16th. And that is your link, again, to the state convention. That'd be great. So we're going to move on to a practice precinct convention. But first I'm going to see a couple more points I wanted to make. Are there also any questions? Yes? When are the precinct conventions? Precinct conventions are any time after polls close on March 3rd until your county SD convention starts on March 21st. Anytime in that 2.5-week period, your county party decides when they're going to be. Yes?
So after the conclusion of the precinct convention, does everything still be documented and handed into the county?
Yes, after the precinct convention, all that documentation is handed into to the next level up, and we'll go through some of the specifics. Some of the links that we're going to drop in the description go to the county party the state party website, which has, if they don't have it already, they're going to have a packet which has the script to read and everything to do with that documentation. Again, you don't have to read that exact script. You don't have to use those exact forms. It's just like a cheat sheet. It's like a fill in the blank, color by number, and you have it done.
But we have to hand it in to somebody.
Yes, hand it in, email it in, or mail it in. But you do, and there's a time limit, and we're going to go through that when we do the practice convention. You absolutely do. That is an absolute requirement of the permanent precinct convention chair to hand that paperwork in. Otherwise, the delegates aren't reported as delegates, and they're not.
Now, is that usually the precinct chair, the elected precinct chair?
It can't. He's asking if that's the elected precinct chair. Let's just go ahead and go over this. So we have the office of a precinct chair. They're elected in the Republican primary, but if they're not contested, they're just automatically in. And their job is to help organize a precinct for the Republican Party. And they're also a part of the county party structure, and they vote. That is a totally, totally separate job from the person who leads your precinct convention. They both have the word precinct, and they both have the word chair, but they have nothing to do with each other except for one minor thing. The elected precinct chair that you're talking about that works all the way year-round, they get first dibs at being the temporary precinct convention chair if they happen to be there. So they don't have any responsibility to be there. If they're there, they get first dibs if they want to be the person who starts out the convention. But if everybody's like, no, we don't like you, we see too much of you, they can pull in somebody else later. Doesn't usually happen, but it can. Does it answer the question? All right, cool. Other questions? Or if we have any who are listening on the live stream, please go ahead and type those in and we'll read them out. Yeah.
Okay, so this one comes from Rohit, and he says he's on the SDA Resolutions Committee, but he doesn't know, or he didn't know there are temporary and permanent committees. Are the currently constituted committees temporary?
So if he is currently on a committee, it probably has nothing to do with the convention process, or it should have nothing to do with the convention process, because there's no work for anybody to be doing and they should not exist yet. He may be simply on a committee of people that the SREC is asked to help give advice. I don't know exactly what it is. Those will be appointed by the person who is the temporary chair of the county or SD convention, and their job is to take everything that the precinct convention gives, all the ideas, and sort through them. Yeah.
There are a lot of counties and SDs that have already assembled temporary committee members for these conventions. And I think he actually is on one of those. They haven't met yet.
Okay, you're on a list, but they don't have work to do yet.
Right.
Okay, so that could be legitimate then if you're on that list. Anything that's happening right now would still be temporary. They also have probably not affiliated yet with the Republican Party, so they're not even legit members of it yet. But what's happening there is people who say, okay, we've done this a lot of times. We know the people who are going to probably be involved and the people who are probably going to vote in this primary, not the Democrat primary or any other primary. So you go ahead and pick them so you have them set. So that's probably what's happening. But that's absolutely temporary. And because they do the prep work ahead of time, and when the actual county SD convention starts on Saturday, March 21st, the temporary members, the temporary committee chairs say, hey, here's the work, here's our report of what our temporary committee has done, here's what we think is a pretty good selection of all the resolutions, of all the rules that came from the precinct conventions, and they give it to the convention. But then the permanent convention chair then says, okay, now here are our actual permanent members. Now here's what happens a lot of times. A lot of times you have the same temporary as permanent. So you have the same chair who gets from temporary to permanent, and they say, okay, you know what, I'm going to keep the same people on my committees. So in practice, a lot of times it ends up being the same people, and the reports end up being exactly the same reports. But it does not have to be. If you don't like the way that your temporary chair ran those committees or the people they put there, you can replace them. But yeah, in practice, it can be the same. So thanks for the correction. I haven't been in a district that did it that way, but I guess that's a way of pre-organizing. However, there's no legitimate work to be done until you get the reports from the precincts, and that has to happen after the precinct conventions. So hopefully that was more clear than mud. Yeah, we good? Okay, other questions? No, we good? Okay, if anybody else has questions right now, you can ask them. If you're listening later on, you have questions, go ahead and put them there. You can tag me so I'll see them, or tag Matt Dorsey, and we'll try to get to you and get you some answers, even if it's much later after this. Even if it's the night before convention, you're trying to figure it out, we will do our best. Okay, so is everybody pretty clear on how generally does a convention run? What do you have to do to show up? Which is you just literally show up and you are a delegate, because everybody there constitutes a quorum, whoever shows up. You don't have to have any other number. And everybody understands how to write a resolution, I think, generally. So we're going to go ahead and do a practice precinct convention. So what I have here is the script that I printed up from the Republican website. Yes?
Yeah, so we do have another question.
Cool, another question.
Chelsea asks, what can a delegate do to help a chair?
That is an awesome question. I'm really glad that she asked that. So Chelsea asks, what can a delegate do to help a chair? A chair has so many responsibilities, especially in a larger district or a larger convention or in the county SD, even at the precinct convention. So being somebody who's ready to be secretary or even be an assistant secretary just to help keep the paperwork straight is very, very helpful, very useful. Helping with a lot of organization, really contact that chair and say, what can I do to help? Do you want me to go put up signs with you the day before? Do you want me to sit at a registration table? I'm good at spreadsheets. I can help you with the numbers thing. Or I'm terrible at spreadsheets, but I can put out papers on chairs. Whatever you're good at, those are some things that are very helpful. If you're interested in being on the committees or even chairing a committee, if that's your strength, and you do a good job of it, absolutely go volunteer and ask if you could have that position as well. But there are so many ways you can. Amy, Gary, y'all think of any more? Jill? Is that pretty much it? I mean, it's going to vary, but definitely there's so many things you can do to just make their job a little bit easier. They have a lot of things going on that they have to do. Cool. Good question. Very good question. All right. So any other questions before we move on? Yeah.
Okay, I know we're still on precinct convention. But,
Right.
leading up to these county SD conventions, you talked about temporary resolutions committee members being possibly replaced to be on a permanent committee for county or SD convention. What's the timeline as far as hearing the report of what the TIP committee did, and then electing new committee members? What do they do at that point?
I will get into a lot of the weeds on this at the next training, but it's important enough I want to talk about it right now. The question was, how does it work if you want to replace the temporary and not have the same temporary committee members as permanent members? So kick out those people and get new people instead of just having the same ones brought in permanently. And this is at tier 2. So the second level up, we're at the county SD convention. This is all the people in your county. You're like meeting your local church. That's kind of what it is. We sit in the auditorium or in a school or somewhere like that, typically, I've found. So the timeline on that is very, very quick. So everybody does a little bit differently, but there's a general timeline anyway. You can have breaks. You can have little bits of time. But typically, sometimes we have a lunch break then, I think. Sometimes we'll have a short recess, but there is not much time at all. Sometimes it's not. So you'll have the temporary committee chairs come and give their reports and say, here's my report. In my county, they've typically posted those reports online the night before sometimes, so we can see them. That's always really useful. So you might ask about that, or you might be able to see some of them ahead of time to see what they are. But if you get your hands on them the best that you can, and they'll have some copies available, but again, there's not much time to go read through and think through, right? And you say, you know what? I don't like what these people have come up with. I don't like what they're doing with this. They shut down my ideas. I don't like the way they're running convention. They're shutting it down. You can then, the chair will ask, are there nominations for permanent convention chair? Now, do they usually make a big deal about it? No, because why would they make a big deal about it? Do they want to be replaced? Usually not. And usually they aren't replaced in my experience. But if you want to, and if you have a good reason that you're like, you know what, I need to replace this chair because they're not acting in a fair manner, then you absolutely do need to nominate somebody to replace them. So have them ready to go. Have them aware of what's happening in the process and what they'll need to do. And when they say, are there any nominations for a permanent convention chair? No nominations? Okay, you've got to run to the mic and say, yes, I nominate so-and-so. And have them ready to go. And we'll talk a little more about that process, but you've got to have those people ready to go. Yeah?
Can the temporary committee members select their own chair, change the chair?
No, they can't. Temporary committee members can't change their own chair that I'm aware of. It's the convention chair who sets the committee chairs. Yeah.
And then that permanent committee meets for 20, 30 minutes or something to go over everything?
It depends. Yeah, the permanent committee often just rubber stamps the temporary committee's work, but sometimes you'll hear additional testimony. Sometimes they meet for 20 or 30 minutes. Sometimes in my area they've met for a couple hours as needed, but again, not a lot of time. So do as much work ahead of time as you can. Be ready to go. All right, let's go ahead and run through our temporary convention. We're just going to keep this quick and casual. When I ask for resolutions, feel free to throw out something silly just for discussion purposes if you want, but I'll leave that up to you. I mean, we can always discuss policy. I'm always up for that. That wasn't exactly the purpose tonight. So here we go. And I'm just reading off the script that I printed from the RPT website. That's it. No magic words. It just makes it super easy. It's like convention in a box. So, welcome. I now call this convention for Precinct 522 to order. I'm just making that up. My name is Rachel Malone, and I am the incumbent precinct chair, if I am, or if the precinct chair is not there, I am the temporary convention chair. Let's hit the pause button. So what if that elected precinct chair isn't there? Then who gets to run it? How do you pick who runs it? Is the next in line the second runner-up for that election? No. It's literally anybody who comes and picks up the paper. How are you going to know where the paper is? Well, you're going to pick it up. Every district is different, especially because now you have them at different times. It's different. You got to call your county party and say, where are they being held and when? And you show up there. And if nobody's there and no paper's there, you just hold it anyway. You can find the rules and you can find the order and stuff to do on the Texas GOP website. You pull it up on your phone and you're good to go. You use napkins to write the stuff down. So the person who runs it, again, like I said, if that elected precinct chair is there, they get first dibs. Otherwise, anybody who shows up who says, hey, I'm going to start it now, and they start it, they're the temporary convention chair. And if you don't like that, then just nominate yourself for the permanent one and see if you can take it over. But that's how it happens. It's anybody who picks it up and says, let's do it. So, welcome. I am the temporary convention chair. Attendees must be a registered voter within this precinct, must have voted in the Republican Party primary election, or completed the oath of affiliation to be eligible to participate. Now, what you want to do to make it easier is when you vote in the Republican primary, have them mark on your card. They'll give you a card, like an affiliation, that makes it a little easier, but you don't have to do that. You can also be checked on the voter rolls, which may be available in that location. Okay, I will now call the meeting to order. The election code states that those present constitute a quorum, so we will proceed. So now we have an action item, so I'm going to appoint my temporary officers. So I will now appoint, I'm going to appoint Gary to fill the role of temporary precinct convention secretary so we can sign in to determine our precinct convention role. So now he gets to have the paperwork and do his paperwork and sign everybody in. So we have our role. It's a list of everybody who's there present at the time. Okay, we will now verify our list of qualified participants. Again, attendees must be a registered voter within the precinct and must have voted in the Republican Party primary election or completed the oath of affiliation to be eligible to participate. And they all sign that, yes, that applies to me, I am affiliated. So don't lie. Don't say that you're with the Republican Party when you're not, when you're with a different one. Okay, and you can compare that to the list of registered voters, which should be available for your precinct to confirm that, yes, they're registered and they voted. We have verified the names and prepared the list of qualified participants. It will be attached to the minutes of the meeting as Exhibit A. We have a total of 4. We're just going to say we have a total of 10 qualified participants for this precinct convention. That would be a large convention. I'm not going to pretend like we are doing a meeting. Typically, you would have maybe 5 or fewer, but 10 would be really big. Yes?
And if it's just you yourself, you just appoint yourself as secretary.
If it's you yourself, you are everything. You point yourself as everything, and you do everything. But you still have to sign it. You still have to have those documents, and you still have to submit them. Because if you don't, then you can't be a delegate to the next convention.
But you don't have to read them aloud to yourself.
You don't have to read them aloud. If you read them aloud in the forest and nobody hears, okay. We'll move on. We have verified. See, precinct conventions are fun, y'all. It's not formal. They're just fun. We have verified the names and prepared the list of qualified participants. It will be attached to the minutes of the meeting as Exhibit A. That sounds formal. Just realize it can literally be that handwritten list on the form if you have it, or on your napkin if you don't. That's all it is. We have a total, I already said that. This convention will be conducted in compliance with the Texas Election Code, the rules of the Republican Party of Texas adopted in accordance with the Election Code. What did I tell you? It's our rule book, right? Talk about Robert's Rules of Order will govern parliamentary procedure. This precinct convention is an important step in the future of the Republican Party, and the actions we take here tonight will serve to influence important party decisions at subsequent conventions. We will now elect permanent officers for the precinct convention. First, we must elect a permanent convention chair. This office is for the duration of the convention only. It is not to become the actual precinct chair who is duly elected by the primary voters at the polls. See, 2 different jobs. Like your pastor can be your banker, but it's still 2 different jobs. It's not always the same thing. It just happens to, right? Okay, so they just happen to both have the words precinct and chair in their names. They're 2 different offices. All right, are there any nominations for permanent convention chair? Seeing none, see how fast that can go? Tricked everybody. Are there any nominations for permanent convention chair? All right, seeing none, I nominate myself. That was even long. Usually it's quicker. So again, if you want to jump in and nominate somebody else, that's how much time you have. That's what we're talking about. Are there any other nominations? Nope, no other nominations. If there are none, I'm going to proceed. Let's see. No other nominations. All in favor of me as permanent convention chair, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. No. Well, fine. The ayes still have it. I will now serve as a permanent convention chair despite somebody's dissent. Thank you very much. I'm sure you knew you could do better. Okay, so now if they had elected somebody else, then that other person would come over and take over everything now. All right, thank you for choosing me. We will now elect a permanent convention secretary. Are there any nominations for permanent secretary? Somebody's got to talk. Somebody nominate Gary. Or somebody else, I don't care.
I'll nominate Justin, because Gary's right.
Okay, we have a nomination for Justin. Do I hear any other nominations?
I nominate Joe.
Okay, so we have 2 nominations. I like this. We have a contested election. Okay. All right, here we go. So, I have never done this as a contested election. That's very interesting. Never done a permanent secretary. That's great. I like it. All right, so we have Jake, right? Justin. Too many J names right here. Okay, Justin and Jill happening right now, right? Okay, all right. So I think the way we do this is just all in favor of, we're going to vote for one and then the other. They spoke. Speak.
I do not want to be secretary.
He does not want to be secretary. Jill.
I think Justin will do a marvelous job.
So neither one wants the job. So we have 2 candidates each vying for the other to have the job. This is a great election. I love this. Okay. All right. So we're going to, you can vote for one or the other. We're going to vote for Justin, then for Jill. So how many are voting for Justin? All right. I got 3 votes for Justin. How many are voting for Jill? Oh, you win by a landslide. All right. Nice. Okay, so Jill has been elected our permanent convention secretary. Thank you for your service. And if needed, I can appoint a permanent assistant secretary. I'm going to appoint Justin a permanent assistant secretary. I'm going to appoint Spencer as sergeant at arms. Matt, you can be his assistant. You don't have to do that, but it's kind of fun. You can. If anybody gets rowdy, they can make him go away or make him shut up. All right. So I'm going to announce. I'm going to get again. If I knew ahead of time I was going to run this, I have that list of actual our delegate slots to convention that I get from our county party, so I know what that is. So I will now announce that. What do we decide? We're going to call it 10 qualified participants are present, that the convention is entitled to elect, how many shall I say? Convention is entitled to elect 16 delegates and 16 alternates to represent the precinct at our county SD convention. That convention will convene on Saturday, March 21st, Time and location has been set by our county executive committee. Will take place at 10 a.m. at First Baptist Church of something town. Anyone wishing to serve on a committee for the county or SD convention should let the county chair know of their interest in advance of the meeting. That ring a bell to anybody? There's a little sentence in there you're going to skip over it if you didn't know what we were talking about. Okay, one purpose of this convention is to elect delegates and alternates to the county SD convention. Any participant may place a name in nomination. The convention first elects delegates and then alternates, both by majority vote. And I didn't really go over alternates much because I don't care about it a lot right now. But the way it technically works is you're electing, say, 16 people to be your delegates. And then if you fill those up and you have more who want to go, they're your alternate list. And if some of the first 16 can't go, then the alternates will fill their places. In reality, everybody who wants to participate in the county SD convention typically gets to, either because there just aren't enough people to fill the positions, or the people who are elected just don't show up, or they don't stay there and you get to fill in for them. So even if there's not room for you as a delegate, just go as an alternate. Show up, please show up if you're just an alternate, because you will get to vote. All right, people are getting bored. We're going to move quicker. So, I know, a lot of stuff to go through. Rubbing our eyes, I get it. Convention, let's see. Precinct convention secretary must certify to the convention that all elected delegates and alternates are qualified. So my secretary is going to confirm they all are qualified. They've completed the oath of affiliation or their primary. Attendance at the precinct convention is not required in order to be elected. But the final list must be approved here at this precinct convention. And we can't add more names once we adjourn. Everybody got that one straight, yeah? So nominations for delegate to the county SD convention are now in order. So we're allowed 16 delegates and 16 alternates from our precinct. And I've got two options here. We can elect delegates one at a time, or we can elect a slate of delegates. So since this is precinct convention and we're not formal, I'm just going to say, hey, anybody here have any ideas? How do you want to do it? I've never done this before, so do y'all want to do one at a time? Does anybody want to ask for a list altogether? What do you guys want to do? What do you think? They want to do a blanket list. Okay, cool. So, all right. So let's determine our list of delegates and alternates. We can develop a list of those who want to attend and are able to, and we can approve that. Also, we can obviously add more later when we finish. This is in our final say. Yes.
I move that since there's plenty of us here, we just have us all go as delegates.
All right, we have a motion for everybody present to go as delegate.
Second.
All right, we've got a second. Is there any discussion? Anybody want to talk about this? Anybody have a problem with anybody else? Nobody ran over your cat? Everybody's good with everybody? Nobody's mad? That's good. We have a... Uh-oh.
Point of order?
Just say what you want to do. So this is actually interesting.
I want to strike Amy from this
Okay, so somebody's offended that he got nominated for secretary, wanted to strike Amy. All right, so we got a motion to strike Amy. So you're going to amend the slate to strike Amy. Okay. Any discussion? Any discussion on that? All right, so let's vote first. If we want to amend that motion to strike Amy, all in favor, aye. Oh, I thought we had a second. No, there wasn't a second. Nope, no second. All right, sorry. Can't do that. All right, so we have our whole motion of everybody who's here. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. All right, so everybody's here, but we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So however many are here, we said 10, so we still have 6 slots. So, yes?
My friend Mike White couldn't be here.
Oh, your friend, okay.
I know he wants to go.
Is he in the, so you have a registered voter?
Yes.
And he voted in the Republican primary? Here in this precinct?
Yes.
Okay, Miss Secretary, can you check our voter rolls? Is he in there?
He is in the voter roll.
Okay, registered, he's a Republican voter. Okay, so we have a motion, do we have a second to add Mike White? Second, all right, any discussion? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Let's try that vote again. How many aye? Raise your hands. Oh yeah, majority wins. But y'all were just lazy about it. Good heavens. Okay, so we're gonna move forward for the sake of our practice convention, but you'll see how that works. We then still have 3 more slots for delegate and 16 for alternate, so you could keep on going and add more to your list. And then at one point we say, okay, we're good with our list. We're gonna move on. They've been selected, and our secretary will make sure they're listed correctly. And then we're going to consider resolutions. So as permanent convention chair, I'm going to ask that any lengthy resolutions be placed in writing. Are there any resolutions to consider?
Yes,
Yes, got a resolution.
I brought a stack of 5 of them.
Have a stack of 5, all right. You want to share them with us? Anybody else have any resolutions you brought?
I have 2.
Got 2? Okay, cool.
I have 1.
Got 1? All right. I'm listening.
I don't want to have to read them all.
You don't want to have to read them all? Well, then, I mean, if you're not going to present your resolution, are you...
I move that everybody's resolution just be sent to county convention.
Oh, so we have a motion that all the resolutions just be sent. We don't even know what they are. All right, is there any discussion on this?
That could be dangerous.
Okay, so does anybody want to say, I'd like to hear what those resolutions are? Let's discuss them. That can still be your motion, right? Well, we're going to discuss them, okay?
Motion that we at least read them before we blank.
Okay, let's read them. All right, why don't you start with yours? All right, give me one of your resolutions.
Whereas, blah, 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 blah.
Doesn't have to have whereas, it's just a statement.
Just the resolution itself.
Just a statement of something that you want.
That the Republican Party of Texas should add a plan to oppose the legalization of recreational marijuana.
Okay, we want to oppose legalization of recreational marijuana. All right, any discussion?
Why just recreational marijuana?
Why just recreational? Why not all?
It'll be easier to pass.
Easier to pass? All right, anybody else? Any discussion?
I thought we were for less government.
Oh, somebody thinks we're for less government, not for more government. Okay, any other discussion?
I'm going to encourage everybody to vote against this resolution.
Somebody wants it to vote against it. All right, we've got some good dialogue happening.
But we don't want to become Colorado.
We don't want to become Colorado, but we want less government. All right, any other discussion?
In Colorado.
Colorado, they have good taxes.
She's into revenue. She wants the
Oh, she wants more tax. She wants more tax.
Cash cow, so we want it.
But you can't walk down the street without getting high.
Okay, so if this was a real, so the people on the live stream can't hear all the discussion. So if this was a real precinct convention, I would absolutely encourage all the discussion people wanted. I would not cut it off. So please don't cut that off. But for the sake of tonight and moving forward, let's just go ahead. We would have continued all discussion. Everybody's done. Let's take, and then somebody would say, I move to just take a vote on that resolution by itself. So we take a vote. Call the question. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Raise your hand if in favor.
Aye.
If in favor of the resolution?
Okay.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nays carry. So that motion fails. Your resolution fails. So sorry, but nice try. Good job. Good advocacy. So you go on like that for all the resolutions, and we're not going to run through all of them unless somebody else wanted to take the chance to do it. But that's how you do it. You discuss it. And it might be that somebody said, why just that? Let's add to it. Everybody says, yeah, let's add to it. Let's make it be everything. Let's oppose all recreational use of Tylenol and ibuprofen, because who wants to get hooked on that? And so I'm making this stuff up, okay? Don't hold that. Don't hold me to that, please. I am a user of ibuprofen sometimes. Anyway, but that's how you do your discussion. And somebody might move to amend it and say, let's do half of it and move on, etc. So we finish with that. And we're just about done here. So these resolutions will be sent on to the County SD Convention for review and possible adoption by the County SD Convention Platform Committee. Is there any other business that should properly go before this convention? And the answer is always no. There's never any other business. So, hearing none, I will now announce that in accordance with Rule 22, a signed copy of the written record of the convention will be available for review by any participant for a 30-minute period immediately following adjournment. That's in the rules, y'all. Don't let your precinct chair say, your convention chair say, oh, you know what, I got to go quick, so I'm just going to not let it be available. Trust me, I'll get it to them. Say, no, you abide by the rules or we kick you out as a delegate. And we go challenge your credentials at the next convention, we make a complaint. Okay? Seriously, make them follow the rules. Make sure you get that picture and that copy of it, of the records, before your convention chair leaves, before you leave. So, I must now officially sign and safely deliver a record of this convention as required by Rule 22 and the Election Code Section 174.027C. Thank you all for your participation in the precinct number 552 Republican Convention. Delegates and alternates who have been elected to participate in the County SD Convention will be sent a notice of meeting and an agenda for the convention. If there is no objection, this meeting of the precinct convention is now adjourned. No objection. All right, thank you for your participation. And there's a note here, the records must be available for participants or media for 30 minutes after adjournment in the same location where the precinct convention was held. Yes?
So if there's a reporter that comes, they have to be allowed to stay.
Yeah?
And they can record the meeting.
I would have to check the rules for what it says about media recording, but I don't see any prohibition.
The delegates have the right to record their meeting.
Delegates always have that right to record your own meeting.
Or live stream.
Live stream, record it, take notes, take pictures of the documentation, and do not trying to be mean to anybody, like I'm going to catch you on something, but so you have the record. If there's a confusion, it's there. It always helps. Are there any questions about that, about our precinct convention? Anything else people wanted to bring up about precinct conventions? I think we covered it, and then some, because we did a lot about the county SD conventions too. I hope that wasn't confusing, but they do come quickly. So I'm just going to give a note to everybody. Make sure you're comment here, ask for help if you got more questions. Stay tuned for our next 2 tiers of training. We will be giving county SD training. We will be giving state convention training. And just one quick note, because I have the microphone and because I can do this and because I don't think Matt's going to shut me down. So obviously, like I said at the beginning, one of the reasons I do this is because I want people to get involved in the process, even if they don't agree with me, so we have more dialogue. But I also really want people to help me with gun rights, and so there's a little bit of a selfish motive there, and I think a lot of people here are interested in that, so it's a common goal. If you're interested, please stay tuned for the Gun Owners of America recommended resolutions. So the policy statements and the policy initiatives, I will say that I very much like I do like the gun rights section in the Republican Party platform. It is very good for our state of Texas. We need to keep it that way, and there are some nuances that we can definitely fix and add to depending on what's happening right now that'll be important. So stay tuned for our recommended resolutions. Please join the GOA Texas Facebook page. We just unveiled that 2 days ago. It's brand new. Join that group. It's a private group. We'll be posting those resolutions there. Yes?
So if GOA has a list of recommended resolutions to take to their precinct conventions, there's probably a lot of other organizations.
Yeah, there are other organizations who have various recommended policy statements or resolutions, and if you like them, you can take them, and if you want to modify them, you can modify them and take the ones that you want and the parts that you like. It's just a starting point to help the dialogue get going and help get some unity on some of these policies across the state. So I hope you'll do that. I hope you'll join with us there, but definitely also, I'm sure the Young Republicans will be weighing in. I'm happy to be doing this for them here tonight, and I hope we get a lot of Young Republican delegates. You guys can do it. You can make a difference, and I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, either one of y'all, or if we're finished. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'll see you around.